Thanks to the new information revealed about the future of the M1 Abrams with the M1E3 test vehicle shown at the Detroit Auto Show, we now know a lot more about what this tank will be when it eventually reaches production. Along with this, however, has also come many unanswered questions and inevitably a large helping of misconceptions. As the title of this video would suggest, the design has caused many to compare it to the Russian T-14 Armata, and you can understand why. On the surface, these two MBTs appear quite similar, moving away from a more traditional layout with a manned turret towards an unmanned one, placing the crew into a more protected position within the hull. Both also offer new power plants over their predecessors and auto-loaded guns, allowing for a crew of only 3. For that reason, and to address many of the common misconceptions I've seen in my comments on the previous video I posted on this topic, I thought it would be worth taking some time to further discuss it in a follow-up video. Quickly before we get into that though, I just want to remind you all that you can now support the channel by buying Kobe sets directly from me at ConeOfArc.store. Link for that will be in the description along with one to my merch store. Now back to the video. To start with, it makes sense to first establish what we know about the new Abrams and to address some of the misconceptions I've seen about it. Most of these are covered in the Chieftains video on the topic, so I definitely recommend checking that one out if you haven't already done so. What we know so far regarding the tank, as I somewhat covered in the intro, is that it will be moving to a 3-man crew placed into the hull. The turret on the one shown at the auto show is only a placeholder, with the final one likely to look far different, containing an autoloader and being unmanned. The power plant appears to be a Caterpillar C-13D inline 6-cylinder diesel engine paired with the SAPA Advanced Combat Transmission 1075, with this being a hybrid diesel-electric setup. The suspension has also been confirmed to be a new system, doing away with the previous torsion bars. It also appears that alongside the new Abrams, the US is likely to be making significant changes to their tank doctrine in regards to the crew members. As brought out in the interview done by the Chieftain, we could see a shift from crew members assigned to positions such as commander, driver, or gunner in favor of a more fluid system where each crew member can act as any role when needed. Even if that doesn't occur, we will absolutely still see major changes with the move from 4 crew members to 3 in how vehicle maintenance and other things related to tending to the tank in and out of combat are handled. While this isn't a comprehensive overview of every individual detail about the tank, I think that sums up the major points well enough that now we can move on to the misunderstandings about it. Probably the most prevalent one I've seen being discussed is regarding the Javelin mounted on the remote weapon station. Many have rightfully pointed out that it doesn't make much sense to attach to something like the Abrams since the main gun can engage any targets an ATGM would be able to. While these concerns are understandable, clarification on this confirmed this isn't something planned for the final design and was essentially just mounted there as a prop for the show. As with most of the details regarding the turret, I wouldn't focus on this too much. Speaking of the turret, another thing I have seen brought up many times is the lack of any sort of roof cage or other forms of drone defense. This is definitely something I'm curious about myself, and the topic was briefly discussed in the interview with a mention of the remote weapon station being able to engage drones.
We understand what the limitations of the tank was, the threats that didn't exist last century that exist now. So when we speak to drones, there's a reason that RWS is up there. Okay. That thing can hunt and kill on its own. We know that it can. Still needs a user, but it can address the threat of the current environment.
However, again, this is likely just something we will have to wait and see how it is handled with the final production vehicle. The next big misconception I have seen is in regards to the autoloader, although I would put this closer to being tank FUD lore than anything. Many of the comments on my last video are about ditching the human loader in terms of reliability. While there is certainly a discussion to be had regarding having an extra crew member around to help out with various things outside of just loading the gun, this argument is just complete nonsense. While there is no denying a human loader has advantages and can often keep up with an automatic one, increased reliability isn't one of them. Autoloader technology goes back decades with examples even during World War II and is already present in multiple modern MBTs. Soviet and Russian tanks have been using them since the Cold War with no signs of going back, so where this idea that the autoloader is unreliable comes from, I'm not entirely sure. If anything, the argument of reliability should be in favor of the autoloader, just like the switch from manual transmissions to automatics in tanks. An autoloader doesn't get sick or tired, and even in the case where it fails, there is normally some way to manually load the gun if necessary in an emergency. Real-life tank combat is also far different from video game combat, and if a tank suffers critical damage, it will likely be pulled back to repair it. I also want to add that being fitted with an autoloader does not mean that it will use a carousel-style system like you see on Russian tanks. It is certainly possible they could choose something similar to that, like on the M1 TTB, now that the crew is out of the turret. However, it could also be fed from bustle racks like the French Leclerc. This is again another thing we will have to see the final design of the turret before we know for certain. The final major misconception I have seen involves the switch to the hybrid diesel-electric propulsion from the previous turbine. I briefly discussed this in my last video on the topic, but I still saw many discussing the perceived loss of horsepower as being an issue with the design. While I'm not sure exactly what the final horsepower rating and performance of the tank will be, the horsepower alone is not the full story of a vehicle's mobility. The tank itself will be losing a significant amount of weight, with the target reportedly set for 60 tons, which alone is hugely beneficial for mobility. On top of that, the new transmission will resolve the issue of low-speed torque, which was one of the reasons for using the turbine up to this point. Aside from the obvious repeating of, we'll have to wait and see with the final design, the documentation from Caterpillar already places the diesel engine at 1,000 horsepower, which is likely far below the maximum it is capable of. Even if that number remains lower than what the turbine produced, higher efficiency from the transmission would mean more of that power actually makes it to where it is needed. Overall, I see this concern as a symptom of the overall view on horsepower from the insane numbers constantly being pushed in various production cars or custom builds. While still obviously important, especially for a heavy-tracked vehicle, focusing solely on big horsepower numbers over every other thing which makes the tank move is a bit silly in my opinion. I'm sure there are enough other misconceptions I haven't covered to make this video far longer, but I think we've beaten around the bush enough at this point and should focus on the main question I posed with the title and thumbnail. Is the M1E3 Abrams the American Armata? While it may seem like a bit of a silly question, and often these discussions fall into the tank equivalent of the game Top Trumps, that isn't what I want to do here. So if you clicked on this video expecting me to write off either tank as complete junk or say the US is copying Russia, you've come to the wrong channel. Rather, I want to discuss if these two potential rivals are truly following a similar design path or if they only resemble each other at first glance. To start with, let's look at the choices made for the drivetrain. As we already covered, the M1E3 is taking an essentially off-the-shelf commercial option for its engine, with the Caterpillar C-13 originating over 20 years ago in 2004. With variants of this inline six-cylinder having been used across a wide variety of different commercial vehicles, this can safely be considered a proven design. As for the Armata, we know it uses a less common layout in the form of the A85 3A X12 cylinder diesel engine. Development of this engine can be traced back to the days of the Soviet Union, with various designs being tested for tanks. I won't go fully into that development here as it would take far too long, but Red Effect has a video going in depth on the topic if you're interested. The important thing for this video is that although that engine has been being developed and tested for almost 2 decades more than the CAT engine, it is not an off-the-shelf choice with a significant commercial presence. While this is not to say one engine is necessarily better than the other, it is a clear difference in design philosophy, with the US leaning into its vast supply of civilian industry rather than relying on strictly military designs. Unlike the engine, which has gotten quite a bit of coverage, there seems to be much less known currently about the transmission, with most online sources mentioning a 12-speed automatic gearbox for the Armata. This again differs significantly from the approach of the Abrams, which features 32 gears with the new SAPA transmission. With SAPA also being a Spanish company, this gives us yet another difference in design approach, with the US working with its allies to further their armor technology rather than solely relying on domestic military industry. Moving on from the power plant, the changes to the crew and turret configurations are probably the two most striking similarities. Both the Armata and M1E3 seek to move the crew into a sort of armored control compartment from which they can remotely control the turret. While the exact design aspects of this may be significantly different in terms of technology and especially software used to operate the tank like this, there is no denying it seems to parallel the Armata, which introduced this years ago. Before you go running off to tell everyone the Americans are copying the Russians though, note the key word there, that being parallel. This setup has already been tested in the form of the M1 TTB, which I really should do a video on. Although from the interview Chieftain posted, it does not appear that the TTB itself was the inspiration behind this move, it shares many similarities with both the M1E3 and Armata designs respectively, whilst originating from the 1980s. Although we don't know what the final turret design will be for the Abrams, we definitely see another similar line of thinking for the design here as that of the Armata. Both tanks are retaining essentially the same gun as their predecessors, rather than also making the jump to a brand new larger caliber. They also share the aforementioned unmanned aspect with an autoloader, but we'll have to wait and see if the US opts for a carousel-style system or one located in the turret. I can see arguments for either now that the crew is out of the turret and the potential profile reduction offered by the former option. Again though, this has also previously been tested on the TTB back in the 80s. So, is the M1E3 Abrams America's T-14 Armata? Yes and no. As we have established fairly well with the comparisons in this video, these two designs share many similarities. At the same time though, these ideas do not originate with the Armata and have been trialed before, but either the technology or backing from the brass simply wasn't ready at the time. It does show a clear path forward in the development of tanks though, with two of the world's largest militaries potentially signaling the future path other MBTs will follow as they unveil their next generation vehicles. It is also worth remembering that as shown with the engines in particular, there is a big difference between these two designs when it comes to the choices made with tech. What we have seen so far with the Abrams program is a willingness to adopt technological advancements made in the civilian sector, which is something I don't believe the Russians have the ability to do, at least not to the same degree. We also see a clear focus on the crew aspect of the tank, with choices made specifically to improve the comfort and livability of the vehicle, with things as simple as cup holders being added. While this also may be true for the Armata compared to older Soviet and Russian tanks, the Russian experience in Ukraine certainly does not seem to indicate a strong focus on crew conditions for their tankers. What do you think though? As always, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments, and if you think I missed something, be sure to let me know there. I'm enjoying working on these slightly different tank-focused videos, but I'm also still working on some new episodes of Forged for Battle and Cursed by Design, so stay tuned for those. Once again, if you enjoy these videos and want to support them, be sure to check out ConeOfArc.store or consider becoming a ConelyFan using the YouTube channel memberships. I plan to add some new perks to that very soon as well, which I hope those of you who choose to support this channel will enjoy. Thanks as always for watching, and I hope to see you back here again for my next video.